Let's take you to the story now. There are allegations that King Mswati III's bodyguards has disappeared with weapons demanding democracy in the Eswatini Kingdom. It's been reported that Mswati refused to participate in a political dialogue as per the recommendations of the SADC Troika. Now, the senior Correctional Services officer has also confirmed that he had resigned, adding that the weapons were handed over to the commander of Swaziland International Solidarity Forces. Eswatini has been plagued by protests calling for King Mswati to democratise that country. For his reaction to the story, we are now joined by Eswatini government spokesperson Alpheous Nxumalo. Mr. Nxumalo, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Is government aware that there are members of the security cluster who have skipped the country and taken the guns that were allocated to them for protection services in Eswatini? Mr. Nxumalo, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Do you want me to repeat that question?
No, you don't need to.
Okay.
I want to respond by putting a question on you. Where are the solidarity forces based where the guns have been received? Is it in South Africa? Or what country are the so-called solidarity forces based to which these so-called forces have taken their guns to? Secondly, I wish to correct just one narrative because I believe that is the basis of all these negative narratives that are perforating the social media. The SADC Troika meeting that was held in Kinshasa in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, the resolution there had nothing to do with the so-called elders that must be appointed to come to the Kingdom of Eswatini for faith-finding mission. The resolution there stands out loud and clear. There shall be a Troika plus Eswatini meeting that will convene at the appropriate time and look at the security situation in the kingdom. It is very unfortunate that one particular and single leader of the SADC states who stood up to make a presentation and a submission in the meeting decided to leave the meeting before it closed and convene a press conference and disseminate a misinformation and disinformation. Every meeting of SADC as head of state, the resolutions are reflected only in one document. And that document is not the submissions of the different and various respective head of states, but that document is a communique, which is like a minutes of a meeting that was held, and it tabulates the resolutions of the meetings that were taken. So coming back to what you're asking for, two security officers who are supposedly forming part and parcel of His Majesty's protection security, that is a distant fact. There is absolutely nothing like that. These two correctional officers which appeared on what you guys referred on that side as Swaziland Democratic News were actually a stage C. They have done this on a number of occasions. They are not protecting the king. They were part of the Correctional Services officers. They decided to do what they did, of which we are still following as to what have triggered their decision. These are two officers which cannot cause a panic in any given situation. So it is incorrect for you, first and foremost, or anybody else, to posit the situation that you are positing. These two officers must hand over the guns to where they belong to, which are the Correctional Services, not to the so-called solidarity network, solidarity forces, which we don't even know where are they based. Maybe you can help us identify their base and their operation point.
Mr. Nxumalo, I appreciate you asking me a question, but I'm afraid we have several sources coming to us complaining about violations in Eswatini, and that is why I am posing questions to you. Now, there is a video that is currently doing the rounds of a member of security cluster who is currently saying that more are expected to defect and abandon their posts next week. Now, the question is, what are you doing about it? And are these actually, in fact, King Mswati security forces who are saying that there is no goodwill to promote democracy in Eswatini?
It looks like we have lost contact.
I can still hear you, sir. You can proceed.
Yeah, do you hear me?
I can hear you perfectly, sir. You can proceed.
Hello, my sister.
All right, we seem to be losing connection, but let me try, Mr. Nxumalo, to ask you this question again. Can you hear me?
Yeah. So what's the question? Yes.
All right, we seem to be losing connection to the Eswatini government spokesperson, Alpheous Nxumalo, there, but we'll definitely be unpacking the story a little bit more with, our journalist here in studio, Sophie Mokoena. But essentially, allegations that King Mswati III's bodyguard has disappeared with weapons demanding democracy in the Eswatini Kingdom. Of course, as I've said, we have a video in our possession, and we've also been speaking to various sources, within Eswatini to uncover just what is going on the ground. But I do have Sophie with me in studio. Sophie, I mean, you've heard what Alpheous Nxumalo had to say, being very vague, of course, with what is currently happening on the ground, and really taking light of the situation. What do we have, currently in terms of the intel on the ground?
Well, what we did, we got information and a video on Friday, in fact Thursday, and as we often do, to do a proper investigation and follow up and try to give everybody a right to reply. I did that on Sunday. I was in communication with him, Mr. Alpheous, who referred me to his colleague, and the colleague sent me back to him, so it was back and forth. And therefore I decided that sitting on this story while we're trying to trace the Eswatini government will not be something that as journalists we are supposed to do. When you give people right to reply before you run the story and they are not willing to come forward to rebut or put their side of the story, you can't drop the story. Because I was in possession of that video. I still have that video of the so-called renegades in terms of people who are responsible for security in Eswatini. And therefore we continued yesterday to speak to the editor of a newspaper that also ran that story. And then we indicated at the end of the story that we did try to get a comment from Eswatini government, but we were not successful. We didn't say they refused or they are not coming. We were not successful because I was sent pillar to post, and today we are doing that follow-up. We have the video, and I can tell you that we are continuing to investigate this story. We might possibly be speaking to these other people who are allegedly going to defect next week. So we will continue with the story.
Thank you so much, Sophie. Mr. Nxumalo, I believe you're still with us. I mean, you've just been listening to our international news editor, Sophie Mokoena, explaining the lengths in terms of the story that we have uncovered. We have in our possession that video that is currently doing the rounds of a member of a security cluster who's saying that more are expected to defect and abandon their posts next week. What's your response, particularly to what Sophie Mokoena has just told us?
Oh, Sophie Mokoena is very creative. I think she must leave the him to go and do, who was sending her from King to suggest that there will be more defections of our forces next week or any other time. That is wishful thinking, and it is not going to happen in our situation. That would be my response to Sophie Mokoena, who sent her from pillar to post. Sophie Mokoena, anybody who wants to talk to government spokesperson will always get hold of him. That's why I'm here with you. Did Sophie Mokoena made any attempt to connect with any government spokesperson or the deputy? Absolutely not. So let her continue with her creativity and let her continue with her gimmicks. Thank you.
Mr. Nxumalo, before I let you go, one of the things that the story has really brought to the fore is that a lot of your citizens are consistently saying that King Mswati refuses to participate in a political dialogue as per the recommendations of the SADC Troika. Now, you recall that King Mswati met with President Cyril Ramaphosa about this very matter in as far as political dialogue is concerned. Have these political dialogues been held in your country? And also, you know, what is King Mswati saying about these latest developments?
I think I like you in the line of thinking and questioning that you are following. His Majesty King Mswati III have conducted and initiated dialogue in this country since 1991, with a series of them. One of the products of those dialogues which His Majesty initiated gave birth to direct parliamentary elections, where a Mswati from their various constituencies in the country elect members of parliament directly to the House, as opposed to a situation where members of parliament come from certain headquarters of political parties, which are enlisted by so-called deployee committees. In 1996, he launched a Constitutional Review Commission, which gave us a constitution to which he subjected himself to, even today, in Ole Mswati. And that constitution, which President Cyril Ramaphosa, to his credit, also indicated that any political reforms that can be canvassed in the Kingdom of Eswatini will have to be within the parameters and the provisions of that constitution. So we have a constitution. His Majesty have never, any given moment, shy away from any proposed political reforms, because in any case, the monarchy in this country and the kingship in this country are a vital interest to the Swaziland nation. There is no way, absolutely, wherein His Majesty can fear to initiate or support any canvass political reforms, because that does not only work to meet the needs of a Mswati from time to time, they also work to consolidate the institution of the kingship and the institution of the monarchy in the country. So therefore, it is not correct, absolutely, that the king is not comfortable with reforms. President Cyril Ramaphosa, when he met His Majesty, they agreed without any reservation whatsoever that political dialogue will unfold in the country following the constitution of the country, as the case may have been. The problem that happened is exactly what you alluded to earlier on. Now we are talking of so-called international solidarity forces, which are busy, an insurgency that is busy maiming, killing the security forces in the country, using intimidation, coercion, and force as an instrument for political influence. That's why the political dialogue have not taken place. The moment the violence which these people are exporting to the country ceases, a Mswati, as they have always done since 1991, if you want to stretch it beyond since 1991, you can do so, to 1968 and post when we were negotiating our independence. There is absolutely no Liswati that fears another Liswati to engage on views and opinions of difference.
All right, Sophie, let me bring you into this conversation. Of course, we know of the deepening political, crisis in the kingdom. Just talk to me about your response to what Mr. Nxumalo is essentially saying.
Fortunately, technology do allow us to refer back. I still have that message, the communication with Mr. Alpheous on Sunday, and then him saying I must speak to his colleague, a lady. I did that with the colleague, and the colleague told me to speak to him because he is supposed to talk, and therefore the messages are there. And I think as the public broadcaster, that is why when we got a message that they want to respond, we said let them respond now. We shouldn't even hesitate, because it has been the intention from day one to ensure that they are able to put their side of the story, or they are able to respond to all these allegations.
All right, Sophie, thank you so much for that update. Mr. Nxumalo, I'd like to wrap this conversation by just asking you a final question. SADC has raised concerns about security and political tensions in your country. How far are the talks that are aimed at bringing all stakeholders together? Because, how many stakeholders summits are we going to have in the region, and as well as fact-finding missions from a SADC perspective before you actually come to the table as we wrap this conversation?
Thank you, my sister. I would love to talk to you in the future. You seem to be very positive in your engagement. You're actually making me to feel SABC is now going to be our partner in the kingdom while we chart our future. SADC does not need to do anything for a Mswati to engage. Absolutely nothing. We are a sovereign state. We have carried a package of reforms, as I've indicated to you earlier on, since His Majesty ascended to the throne. SADC had no headache with the Kingdom of Eswatini. It's actually the Kingdom of Eswatini which helped many countries in SADC, including your respective country, South Africa, to gain its independence. Half of your presidents so far, they had their life here in Eswatini. They hid here, we educated here, we gave them sanctuary, we assisted them to craft a future of South Africa. So no one in SADC should scratch his head or her head about what is Swaziland going to do about these challenges. We are equal to each and every challenge and contending problem.
All right, Mr. Alpheous Nxumalo, thank you so much for your time. I think we have lost his connection again. Of course, he's a Eswatini government spokesperson, Alpheous Nxumalo, not answering our question in as far as, the fact that government is aware of security clusters who have skipped the country and have taken weapons in the form of guns that were allocated to them for protection services in Eswatini. Sophie, let me bring you into this conversation as we close the discussion, but just your views in terms of where this particular matter is going to go, because we do know of the conditions that are in the kingdom. We've spoken to one news editor yesterday, just talking about the transgressions from human relations capacity point of view, and just some of the violations that are happening in the kingdom. And now we are hearing that there are more defects expected to be happening in as far as this video that has gone viral is concerned.
At all times when we cover Eswatini, we speak to both sides, and our colleagues in Mpumalanga do that all the time, and we are also giving a backup from Johannesburg. We'll continue to follow the story, and we'll continue to speak to the government of Eswatini and those who are in exile in South Africa and those who have defected. If all goes well, next week we will be speaking to those who have defected and those who will be at that time perhaps have just defected, if all goes well. Therefore, we'll continue to give a balanced story in line with the SABC policy in the news division, being impartial and independent without fear or favor.
Excellent. Thank you so much, International News Editor Sophie Mukwena there for us. Of course, the conversation all centers around allegations that King Mswati III's bodyguards disappearing with weapons and demanding democracy in Eswatini Kingdom. Of course, we'll continue to track this story as